Have you ever seen the reaction of baking soda with vinegar? Oftentimes when we see that reaction, it's usually when we're building a model volcano and we want that great eruption to occur. So you mix vinegar with baking soda and it creates what we would consider lava. Now what's happening there is actually a chemical reaction. The acid of the vinegar is reacting with the base baking soda, creating this chemical reaction. What we can look at in that chemical reaction is the temperature and how that changes over time. A lot of times when people look at this reaction, because there's lots of bubbles, students especially will think that it's boiling. But when we think boiling, oftentimes we think of water and heat. So the question is, what really happens to the temperature when baking soda and vinegar interact with each other? So the experiment we're doing today, called cool reaction, is a great experiment to use to cover the NGSS standard chemical reactions. So to do this experiment, we're not going to use the thermometer. Instead, we're going to use a temperature probe. And the advantage of using a temperature probe over a thermometer is that it can collect data a lot faster and actually graph the data for us. So students can actually see in real time what is actually happening with that reaction instead of just concentrating on trying to get readings from a thermometer, which they also might find difficult. The other advantage of using a temperature probe over a thermometer is that it's a lot more robust and we don't have to worry about an accident of it breaking, especially because it's not made of glass. So this experiment is really easy to set up. All you need is a cup, a spoon, some plain distilled white vinegar from the grocery store, and some baking soda. The other thing that is very highly recommended is that you really should have goggles for your students because we are doing a chemical reaction, and even though these are normal household items, they still can be dangerous. It's also a good idea to have around is some paper towels because you never know what kind of mess that can be created by your students. So one thing I've done to help make this experiment go faster is on the cup that the students would use, I've drawn a black line with a Sharpie. That way I know how much vinegar I want the students to add to this cup. And that's going to vary based on the size of cup you're going to be using because you want to make sure you don't have too much vinegar because then you're going to get a very messy experiment. But you don't want too little vinegar because then it won't be as impactful for the students. So first order of business, I'm going to put my goggles on for proper safety. Now that I have my goggles on, I'm going to go ahead and take my distilled vinegar and I am going to pour enough in the cup so it comes up to the line that I marked. I'm also going to take my temperature probe and make sure that it's connected to the graphical analysis 4 on my iPad. This is a very fast reaction that occurs, so we only need to record data for about 40 seconds. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my temperature probe in my cup. We want at least one student to hold on to the cup so that the weight of the temperature probe does not cause it to tip over. I'm going to go ahead and start data collection. Now, while data collection is going, we're getting a baseline of what the temperature of our vinegar is. After about 10 seconds, I'm going to take some baking soda and I'm going to add it to my vinegar and then start stirring with my temperature probe. And while this is happening, you can see it's a very exciting reaction for the students to happen here. So they should be making also visual observations of what they witness happening during this reaction. And we're going to keep stirring, keep letting it go until the end of our 40 seconds, and then we're going to be done. So I'm going to go ahead and take my temperature probe out, put it on a paper towel so that I don't get vinegar all over the place, and now I can observe and analyze my data. So when we look at this graph, we can easily answer that question that we had of what happens to the temperature when we mix vinegar and baking soda together. And we can see based on the shape of the graph that the temperature started going down right after we added that baking soda here. And as it goes down, that means that we are having a cooling reaction. So once the students have finished analyzing their data, the nice thing is that this experiment happens so quickly and we can get our data so fast that students can then ask a question and look at other aspects of this data. They can ask questions such as, what happens now if I add more baking soda to this vinegar? Am I going to get the same type of reaction? Is it going to be as dramatic? What happens if I use a different type of vinegar? We could use like red wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar, any other type of vinegar, and see if the same type of reaction happens and if the temperature change is just as dramatic. So it's a great way to get students really interested in doing this hands-on science, looking at chemical reactions of something that they can actually just basically do at home. But now, by adding in a temperature probe, it adds another level of information and data for them to become more versed in graphing, data collection, and other really important science concepts, including math concepts as well.